we go. And there was another video that I saw on something. I can't remember. But anyway, of yours. And I thought, I kind of like this one better.
I bet the other one was the Halloween one I did.
Was it? Or
yeah,
Britney Spears skirt?
I don't know.
Club or something. It was somebody's video, not yours. You know what I mean?
Oh, I bet that's the one I did. I did a suicide number, and I'll bet that's the one I did.
I think you're right. Yep, I think you're right. Jesus, you're gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you. That photo's from the first Women's March in New York City.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Did that whole march in dragon heels. I was definitely miserable the next day.
Really?
Well, I wore like 5-inch heels for the whole thing.
Jesus. Why?
I don't know, because I'm an idiot.
How old are you, sweetheart?
16.
You're 16?
No.
Then I'm 25.
There you go. I think this is a great way to go.
I just want to wait till the end of this because this is something I found out. I went on your website. I have never been on your, I go through your Facebook page all the time, but I'd never been on your website.
Oh, it needs so much updating.
Well, I don't know, because I found out a lot of information about you that I didn't know before, and that's like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And look, 95 million people followed your advice. You're a trendsetter.
Hopefully. View options.
Ta-da!
Did it work?
Yes, baby, it worked.
Woohoo!
You're little, but you're here.
I'm here. It's okay.
There. Now we got it. Woo. So here's what I found out. When I was going through your website,
Mm-hmm.
You are Muslim?
I am.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
How fascinating.
Yeah.
And
I grew up in the Middle East, and I grew up, in a Muslim country with Islamic influences and religious studies and all those good things.
so when did you move here?
I moved to the U.S. when I was 18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have an accent of any kind, Patrick, did you?
We spoke English at home, and also, partially spoke English at home. But also I did come to the U.S. in the summer times to visit my family that lived in the U.S. So I grew up with both languages, and I also spent the first 8 years of my life in the U.S. when I was really little.
Oh, okay.
So I popped back and forth.
All right.
Which makes me sound very fancy and like I come from some very rich family, which I do not.
So tell me this. Alex is coming in, so she can fix something for me. She did it.
That's what it was.
Look. Da, da, da! And now I know everything. I knew she could do it. Now.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Okay. How old are you?
16.
Honest to God.
16.
How old are you?
35.
Okay. I'm 65, and I have no problem saying that. But anyway.
So we're only a couple years apart, really.
30 years.
That's a couple years.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you're gay. So, but anyway.
Right, which means I'm like old and dead by now. I mean,
at
30, you're dead. At 35, you become a daddy.
So where are your parents?
So my parents all live in California now.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, so my parents are in California now. My grandparents on one side of my family are still in Turkey.
wow.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that I was thinking about, and it really drove it home to me again when I was looking through your website. It's one thing to be a drag queen. This is my opinion, and you tell me how off base I am. All right.
Okay.
It's one thing to be a drag queen in New York, LA, Chicago, all these other places. But to be a drag queen in New Haven, to me, takes tremendous, tremendous, tremendous courage because New Haven is small.
Hmm.
And I wonder, in your time, I was shocked at how long you've been doing, the performing arts and an artist. And um, what has been initially the response to you? And you and I have met years ago, which you don't remember, in City Hall. We were both there for some sort of an event that I don't remember what it was. But anyways, go ahead.
I mean, I think that so it's interesting. So I've been around drag my whole queer life, ever since I came out. Because when I came out, so I came out when I was 18, when I had just moved to the U.S. I guess I was sort of out to very small groups of people
Hmm.
before that, but like actually living as an out gay person, that happened when I was 18, when I came to the University of Hartford for college. Um, and I don't know, like 3 weeks after I came to college, I went to my first queer space, which was the Polo Club in Hartford, which unfortunately no longer exists. But that was a drag bar.
Hmm.
And that was my first time really being in that kind of a space and seeing anyone even doing anything close to drag. And yeah, so it was like my whole queer life, I've had drag around me in some shape or form. I mean, by the age of like 20, I was helping people, some of the drag queens backstage. I had gotten to know a lot of them because we went to the Polo Club a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just been around me for so long that I don't really think about it, I guess. When I started doing drag, so I started doing drag the week before my 30th birthday. I did it as I want to cross this off my bucket list. And I'd gotten really into the drag scene because one of my best friends at the time did drag, and I went to every single one of his gigs with him and always helped him backstage, carried his bags. I even helped him with like planning his shows and like coming up with jokes because he hosted. And I always did his boob contour for him because I did it really well. And so I'd been in drag forever and I knew everybody, but I never had put it on. And I went to Robin Banks, the notorious Robin
Oh,
Banks.
right, Robin. Yeah.
Yep. And I said to her, "Hey, Robin, can I do your show? Just like I want to do drag before I turn 30 and get it out of my system and blah, blah, blah. And like, crop it off my bucket list." And she said, "Sure." And so she put me in the show the week before my birthday. And instead of doing one number like I had planned, she had me do four. And I did four performances. And the crowd, like almost all of them came to see me because it was like all my friends. And Robin thought I did such a good job, she ended up paying me. So my first time I did drag, I actually got paid to do it.
Wow, huh?
Um, and yeah, and then I just kind of did it from there. And I guess like the reaction to me doing drag, most people's reaction was either they didn't care, like they didn't care in like a good way, or they were like super supportive. The only people that I had kind of like weird reaction from was some of my coworkers. And it wasn't necessarily weird in a bad way, but it was definitely like they were like, huh, what does this mean? Kind of weird.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. He's going to be walking in 6-inch heels and a wig tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. And there was definitely like, I had this like really interesting moments with one of my supervisors where I like jokingly said, like, what would you do if I started coming to work in heels? And the response I got from them was, well, I think you want people to take you seriously, don't you?
I'm sorry, sweetheart, I didn't catch that.
She said, I think you want people to take you seriously, don't you? As
Eh,
like coming into heels would make me not serious about my career. Um, and so that's really the only kind of like negative response I ever got. Like overall, everybody around me, like I was a little nervous to tell my mom, just because when I came out to my mom, uh, I literally said, it's not like I'm walking down the street in drag or anything.
That's
um, that's literally one of the first things I said to her when I came out.
yeah.
Um, and so I was a little nervous to tell her, and like, I mean, there's portions of my family that don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't really know how certain people who do know feel about it because I just don't talk to them about it. But my mom, like, she sends Kiki a birthday card every year, so she
Yeah.
clearly doesn't care. Unfortunately, none of my family members have ever seen me perform because they don't live nearby. And my mom was supposed to come when I stepped down as Empress of Connecticut, and because of just life, she couldn't. And then COVID happened because I stepped down like 4 weeks before everything shut down for COVID. So yeah, my family's never seen me do drag. My dad saw me in drag once when I did like a partial drag,
Mhm.
but that was the only thing they've ever seen. So like, so yeah, I mean, everybody around me has been pretty cool, and I guess because I surround myself with people who are going to be cool with it, I didn't really have any bad.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I have a tendency over the years, I have learned who I'm gonna spend time with and who I'm not gonna spend time with. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? I
Exactly.
don't want to decipher friends anymore, and I don't want to have to work at a whole lot of relationships. You know, and
Exactly.
at my age, it's just too hard.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like I work so hard, and I'm always so tired and stressed out from my day job, but also, I mean, drag is tiring. And before COVID hit, I was doing drag 3 4 times a week, every week. And
What's your
I just can't have people around me that are negative, or people that bring out negative behavior in me.
right? Right.
And so over the years, it's just been, there might be people I still care about that I don't see
Mhm.
ever. And when I do see them, it's nice. But the people who are going to be around me on a daily basis, they have to be people who support me, and they have to be people who are going to understand the way my life works. And my
Mhm.
life is very complicated. I work a lot. I perform a lot. I have very little time for anything that is not one of those two things. And so
Mhm.
people who are in my life and who I care about and who care about me the most are people who understand that they may not hear from me for 3 months, but it doesn't mean I don't love them and I don't care about them. It's that I'm just really busy. And, you know, a lot of my friends understand that if they don't message me, I might not message them first. And it's
Yeah,
not because I don't care. It's just, I'm so like, my mind is in so many places that I think about them, or they're like top of mind, but I don't think to stop and text, or I don't think to stop and call. Um, and it's not a sign that I don't care. It's just the way my brain is.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Um, you are Miss Kiki Lucia or Lucia?
Lucia
Lucia.
of the
And
Hartford Lucias,
what?
of the Hartford Lucias.
um, and you and I met when Alex and I went to your show at Olives and Oil.
Mhm.
And 30 years ago, maybe, the one and only time I've been able to get to Provincetown, and it's only because of it's not a real accessible place for me, driving wise and whatnot. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, went into like a bar slash cafe restaurant kind of a thing. And there was the door person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like a doorman
Mm-hmm.
or
Like a bouncer.
yeah, but she was in drag from head to
Hmm,
toe.
that's fun.
And she was and is to this day, Patrick, the most gorgeous woman I have ever seen in my life, ever seen. And it has such an imprint on me, you know? She had flawless skin,
Hmm. It was
flawless,
probably all fake, but yeah.
whatever. And, you know, long, straight black hair, was dressed just impeccably. And I was just stunned because, not because of the whole drag thing, but that I had never seen that beautiful of a woman in my life,
That's
you
awesome.
know? And so when we had the opportunity to go to your show at Olives and Oil, I said to Alex, come on, let's go. And she was up for it, you know. And she's my daughter, what the hell, you know? And so when we went, and this is how I felt when you and I met. I was instantly, instantly drawn to you, like a moth. I don't want to say a moth to flame, but like
I mean, I'm a flamer. It's fine.
but like an instant connection to you, an instant connection to you. And if I could have sat with you that night, all night, and just talked, I would have been absolutely in heaven. You know, I didn't, there was something about you, Patrick, that I just immediately connected with, just immediately. And it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. When I look at your videos, a couple of the videos, like I said, that I'd looked at on your website, um, you have stunning eyes. And they are that color of brown that is almost black, you know?
Yep.
And they're just like, Alex was watching your beautiful video last
Hmm.
night, and she was so entranced, you know? And that's what, that to me is why I started doing this podcast. You are all icons to me. You are trendsetters, you are activists, you are uh, people of substance.
Well,
And,
thank you.
and, you know, and I just couldn't be happier that you're in my life for, you know, however long and for whatever reason, you know.
Hmm.
So, having said that, what are some of the things that you do at the Pride Center?
Hmm.
What are some of the things that you do in your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing?
Sure.
Um, I want to know what is scaring the hell out of you. I want to know what is the most wonderful thing in the world for you right now. I really want to get to know who you are, aside from the whole, you know, drag.
Persona.
Yeah, well, I don't want to sit here with my tongue hanging out for an hour. You know what I mean? Not that that isn't a look, but you know.
Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you want to
what do
know?
you do at Pride? Let's start there.
So at the Pride Center, I'm the executive, I can't speak, the executive director of the New Haven Pride Center.
You are? I didn't
I
know that.
am.
You're the
That's
top.
what I do all day. Um,
Oh,
and I mean that translates to a lot of things. Up until a year ago, I was the only person really working there a year and a half ago.
really? I
And
didn't
now we
know they
have,
had any employees at all. So, yeah.
yeah, well, right here. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So they hired me in 2017. I was the first employee the center ever had. Um, we had been around for over 20 years at the time that they hired me.
Right.
And so I worked alone at the center for about 2 years, and did everything. Everything you can imagine, from programming to phrasing the money to cleaning the bathrooms to everything you could possibly imagine.
Mhm.
Um, and
That's the sign of a good leader, you know.
Hey, listen, I will never ask anyone to do something I won't do myself.
If it's got to be done, hey, you know.
Exactly.
So anyway,
Exactly. So last year we got our first second employee, or our first not me employee, and the first was our program officer for youth, and then shortly after, Laura Bocadoro, who I think you also met at Olives and Oil, who is kind of our catch-all staff member. They both started in June last year, and then since then we've now grown to. By the end of this month, we'll have 5 full-time staff members and
wow.
4 part-time staff members. So from 1 to 9 in a year and a half. And let me tell you, that's exhausting. So I can't really say now that I do everything. I used to be able to say that, but I don't do everything anymore, which is kind of nice. But I do a lot still. I'm still I kind of, under the title of executive director comes, director of programming, director of development, director of marketing. I wear all those director hats because we don't have those kinds of positions. So I have a hand in everything, but I don't do everything.
And you do work with Long Wharf as well, right?
We do. Yep, we partner with Long Wharf. We supported a couple of their productions last season. I am personally very interested in LGBTQ history. And so when they did I Am My Own Wife, I actually wrote program notes for them and was kind of their, not dramaturg because I'm not smart enough to be a dramaturg, but I wrote dramaturg-like comments for their program about the place and history of LGBTQ people when it relates to World War II and the Nazi experience. Because that's a particular area of history that I'm really fascinated by. And so we partner with Long Wharf. We really work with everybody and anybody who wants to work with us. I'm ready to do, this past summer, we did a lot of work with Arts and Ideas. Even during COVID, we were helping them with some programming. We actually just did a program with them 3 weeks ago in advance of the election. And so we partner with pretty much everybody. There's not really anyone in the city that we don't have some kind of relationship with, even if it's very superficial. And part of that is just, I've been around for so long in the city. I actually haven't been around that long, but I've been around for about 10 years in New Haven. And, being someone who lives in the city, works in the city, and plays in the city, I've just gotten to know a lot of people over time. And so, even if it's just a passing relationship of I know the owner of said business or whatever, we have relationships all over the city. And then, and with having so many new staff members join too, they're bringing all these kind of really great relationships to the table. And so the center really works with a lot of different people. I remember for the community foundation grant I did last year, I had to make a list of all of our partners, and there was 150 businesses and organizations on the list.
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
It's, and it's everything from partnering on a single program to larger long-term relationships that we have, with some of the LGBTQ health organizations. We have these massive relationships that, range from referrals to educational opportunities to everything you can think of. So it's a lot. It's, we try to do something and be something for everyone that we can be. Sure. And, be there for as many people in the community that might need us as possible.
Yeah. Do you, it's interesting that you said that about World War II, because I don't know why, World War II has become just so important, something I'm just learning so much about. And, I'm real big on the code breaking and Bletchley Circle and Alan Turing and all that, and it's just a fascinating era. And I think we get lost.
Alan Turing was gay.
Oh, yeah, right. And so that's why I said that. And so, and he committed suicide because of being gay.
And going through what was considered at the time appropriate punishment for queer behavior, which was to be castrated.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It is.
The
It's kind
minds
of
that we have destroyed.
it's kind of fascinating to think that like this person who essentially was a vital piece of the victory of the Allies. Um, I mean, it was all classified work, so obviously nobody really knew that. But this idea that this person was so vital to the government, but then the government wasn't willing to protect him. How do you even begin to start to protect all the unknown people? Right? Like
Yeah.
this was someone who like literally was one of the most important employees of the British government. And then the British government
If not
immediately.
the most important.
Correct. And then the British government still turned around and like castrated him and pushed him to a place where he felt the only option he had was to commit suicide. It's kind of fascinating to think about. And that's just one person, right? That doesn't take into consider any of the people. And, it's one of the things like when we talk about queer history, and I promise I won't go on a big history lesson rant here.
No, that's right.
But like one of the pieces of history that not a lot of people talk about, and is definitely not taught in schools, is so in 1945, when the Allies officially won and the Axis and specifically Germany signed the peace treaty, one of the things that they did was they liberated all of the concentration camps all over Germany, Poland, and even Austria. There was a couple. And part of that liberation was that they let everybody go. And I put that in quotes because they didn't really do that. There were many people who were found still guilty under the law of whatever reason they were there, primarily Romani people and queer people, because they were still considered outlaws, because they were not part of the rules that the Allies immediately overturned, which released the Jewish community, prisoners of war, political adversaries, religious leaders, all of those causes. People were, because those laws were all overturned as like Nazi propaganda, they were released. But queer people, particularly gay men, were not, because the act of homosexuality was still considered illegal, because it was illegal in allied countries, similar to the experience of Romani and even Black folk who were imprisoned. And so a lot of queer people, again, specifically gay men, were put in prison post World War II after surviving concentration camps. Some of them had been in camps for over 10 years, because the first concentration camps in Germany were actually established in the 1930s, early 30s, 32, 33. And so these gay men who had survived upwards of 10 years, maybe even longer, in a concentration camp doing hard labor and being, subject to sexual experimentations that were done on them, were put in prison. And many of them never saw light. They died in prison after surviving concentration camps.
Right.
And there were men who were put in prison post-World War II that were not released until 1968, which is 23 years after the war ended. And, these people's lives were completely stolen in a way that was...
barbaric. It was inhumane and it was barbaric.
And it's crazy because we're taught, I don't think we all think this, but we're taught, Allies were good, Axis were evil, Germany was evil, Britain and Spain, or not Spain, Britain and France and the United States were the good ones, and blah, blah, blah. And then if you look at the other side of the ocean, Japanese were bad, Chinese were good, so on and so forth. But the reality is that when it came to LGBTQ people in Europe, the Allies were no better than the Nazis. Maybe they weren't rounding them up and putting them in concentration camps, but they were definitely... sorry, I got a call from someone. I was just looking what it was. They were definitely, not doing much better for us. And so it's just fascinating. It's also really fascinating to think that, like, pre-World War II, post-1, there were these thriving queer communities all over the world, including in Germany. And they all kind of vanished overnight, even in countries that were supposedly leading the charge of the good. And you look at things like eugenics, which was primarily used to persecute Jews during World War II, but it was also used for other folks, was developed originally in the United States, funded by Ford Foundation. It was Ford Foundation funded research. and was actively used in the United States through the 70s to persecute and castrate gay men and lesbians, and even use, oh, what's it called? When they drill the hole in and they like hammer into your brain. Lobotomies. That's all came out of eugenics.
Well, it's interesting you should talk about that, because from 1975 to 85, I worked at Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown, a psychiatric facility. And we had, as patients, a lot of the people that had been lobotomized in the 30s. And if it wasn't lobotomies, it was shock treatments and
Right.
the insulin shocks and so on and so forth. And, you know, our history is replete with us versus them mentality and behavior, you know. And so I guess that's kind of what I want you to talk to me about is, are you happy? Have you ever, as a teenager, were you terrified when you started to realize you were gay? Were you, you know, and if this is stuff you don't want to talk about?
No, I'm happy to talk about it. You know, it feels so long ago in so many ways. And I think one of the things that, like, it's important to frame my experience in the context that I didn't grow up in the United States. And so my experience is also not necessarily relatable in that sense. And also I don't always talk about this because I don't want to paint a group of people a way that Americans already quasi-paint them, which is that Muslims are these horrible, blah, 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 and the Middle East is just terrifying and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to paint it that way because I don't know if my experience would have honestly been that much different had I been in the United States.
But I want you to speak to yours. You.
Yeah.
What
yeah,
you
I mean,
felt, what you know?
Yeah, so, I mean, so I'm a suicide survivor. I attempted suicide when I was, I think I was 11. I might have been 12. I've known I was a gay man for my whole life. I mean, there's not a time that I can think back that I don't recognize being gay. Not like, oh, I was being sexualized at 4, but like I remember thinking things that I remember thinking from when I was as young as I can remember, all relate back to like this idea of like, I thought this boy was cute, but like I recognized that as an adult, but as a kid, I was like, I just want to be his friend because he's nice. You know, and like, so I know I've always been attracted to the members of the same sex. I've always been attracted to boys, or men, or whatever, you know, whatever term you want to use. And
so at 11, your suicide?
Yeah, so I
should say, not your suicide.
Yeah, I had it all planned. I had it all planned. I didn't go through with it because my little sister called out for me from the other room, and it like snapped me into reality for a minute.
Yeah.
And I stopped. And because I was home alone with her, and it was like this moment of like, oh, I shouldn't do this because like then she's all alone, and like that's not cool. And like I had this like very like logical conversation with myself. I'm a very logical person. I was an extremely logical child. And I don't say this because I was smart, because I wasn't necessarily smarter than anybody else, but I had this very like logical perspective on the world. Really? I think it's because I'm a super old soul. And so I like had this whole logical conversation with myself about why making this decision was a bad decision, and decided not to ultimately move forward. But yeah, I mean, I was tortured by everybody around me. And I was tortured when I was in the US just as much as I was when I was in Turkey. You know, like I said, I don't want to give this impression that like life was so much harder because I was in a Middle Eastern country or I was in a Muslim country. You know, I think the reality is, yes, being a queer person in Turkey is very different than being a queer person in the United States. But honestly, when I was growing up in the 90s, it wasn't really that different. and I say that as someone who came to the US when I was growing up, at the same age. And
Mhm.
I heard all the same things. And ironically, I'm more masculine in Turkish and when I'm around Turkish people. So it's not like I was like this flaming, like queen walking through the room.
Right, right.
But I think the moral of the story is children are mean, horrible creatures and shouldn't be allowed to live on Earth. And so, yeah, like I had a rough time. I had a really rough time in college too. I had some really weird experiences in college in the United States. Like I said, I went to the University of Hartford. I had some great experiences, but I also had some really awkward, weird experiences. And like I remember we were gonna guerrilla style like protest at the university once because certain things just weren't getting taken care of. And again, I don't say this to like call out the University of Hartford, like, oh God, they were so horrible to students. I say this as like, I think generally in the early 2000s when I was in college, universities were still not up to date on how they should have policies that protected queer students. I think
Hmm.
they're doing better about that now. I'm not in college, so I don't really know, but I imagine that they're better now than they were 15 years
And
ago.
I think too that there are certain protections that are in place that if they aren't better,
Yeah,
there are avenues that people can take
correct.
to fight back,
Well,
to
and there's just more
to regain some of
presence.
your self-respect too.
And there's just more presence, like like
Right,
maybe you don't know, but I imagine most students know that if they're having a major issue at their university, that they can pick up the phone and call a GLAD or a Lambda Legal or reach out to their local Pride Center or whatever. Like
right,
when I was in college, again, this is over 15 years ago, I I had no idea what those kind of resources were. And I was coming also like to a foreign state from a foreign country. And so like for me, I really didn't know what my options
right,
were.
right, right.
And so I remember like when we were having some of the issues, like we didn't even know who to go to in the university like system to talk to someone who could help us with the issues we were having. And we were like, I was president of the LGBTQ organization and I didn't know who to go to because I didn't know who our advisor was because we didn't really have one. And so
Mm-hmm.
like versus now, I think most universities, at least in the east northeast area, have some
Hmm.
kind of liaison of some sort that is fairly well known within the university system. Is like that's who you go to if you're having problems on campus.
Right,
That's who you
right.
go to if you're having a problem with a professor or something like that. And so I think it's to me it's a different world to imagine. Of course, there's all kinds of new problems, right? Social media bullying and all this
Yes.
kind of stuff that I didn't have to deal with that.
My one of my favorite sayings is what passed is prologue. So there's always going to be something else coming down the road.
Exactly.
Let me let's switch focus just a little bit if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go
Um,
for it.
what terrifies you, Patrick? What really at rock bottom just scares the living shit right out of you?
Um, hmm. There's things I'm scared of. Well, so first of all, I'm a big scaredy cat. I'm scared of like everything.
You're
Like you,
scared what?
I'm scared of like everything.
Oh,
But
well,
but I
yeah.
like actual terrifies. Big things, big concept things, climate change, war, drought. The fact that there's too many people on this planet. Um, you know, I have I have very strong fears of anti-bias, just anti-biasness,
Well,
racism,
one of the things
homophobia,
that
transphobia, all of those things are very, very frightening to
well,
me.
it's one of the things that just terrifies me. I mean, like gut wrenching terror
Hmm.
is that I have a tremendous fear of being trapped.
Hmm.
Trapped physically, trapped emotionally. I can't watch animals being hurt
Mm.
on TV because they have no way out.
Hmm.
So what are some things like that in your just, do you know what I mean?
I think one thing, and it's not quite that, but it is that, is I have a very big fear of like disappointing people and people not loving me. Um,
Really?
I have a huge complex.
Yeah.
You know, when I think about like, there's things like everything I do in life, it's about like thinking through, is this going to disappoint people? Is this going to make people mad at me? Is people going to not love me? Like that's like a constant thought in my brain
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
Like literally everything I do, I have this fear that like it could be something as simple as like me making a decision of what to cook for dinner and being terrified my boyfriend's gonna hate it and then be like, "Rah!" And it's gonna like, hey, your food is terrible, you know, and that's gonna erase like all the meals I've ever cooked for him. Like I have this, it's irrational, but it's there.
Well, yeah, that's like my fear of being trapped. I'd like to meet the person who thought they could trap me. But anyway, but so how do you counteract that?
That's a very good question. The answer is I don't know. I don't
Well,
counteract it.
like
I live with it.
there must be some sort of self-talk that you give yourself because you're able to get out of bed in the morning.
True.
You know?
I think what it is, you know how I counter it is I follow my gut.
What?
My gut instincts.
There
I
you
follow
go.
my gut instincts because very rarely has my gut instinct ever steered me in the wrong direction. And if
Yeah.
I get any kind of bad feeling when I start to do something, it
Hmm.
usually is a sign I shouldn't do it. I've always been like that. My dad always says I'm like the most careful child in the world because I got hurt a bunch of times as a kid, as any kid does, but I got hurt at such a lower level. When I got hurt very big, you know, like I did things like break my leg.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't fall down the stairs. I like broke my leg playing baseball. I didn't, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't, you know, get an injury doing dance. I ripped one of my tendons in half like
Yeah. Yeah.
that. But I was always a very careful child. And I think that it's because I've always had a pretty good gut instinct and good, like spidey sense of like, oh, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't do this.
Right, right, right.
And 99% of the time I listen to that voice.
Yeah.
And almost every time, if not every time I haven't listened to it, it's gone badly.
So what that tells me, okay, and I'm going to be, like shrink here for a second.
Okay, yeah,
So
go for
what
it.
that tells me is that you have this fear of rejection, not being loved, having people be mad at you, yada, yada, yada. And I know exactly how that feels. And when I was younger, I felt that way. But now that I'm old, see, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Mhm.
And the horse you rode in on. But what it tells me is that somehow or other, Patrick, you've internalized the ability to not so much control your environment, but control your response to it in a way that has made your life incredibly successful. And
Probably.
isn't that cool?
Yeah, I am a control freak.
Yeah, but you've internalized that so that it is a very, I don't want to say it's productive. You have taken this fear, legitimate fear, whether it's rational or irrational, it's yours. So what the hell?
Irrational, but that's okay.
Whatever. And you've somehow or other, without even realizing it, taken yourself and this fear and kind of meshed them together and produced a terrific life.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Well, you have.
I guess my outlook on the world is that I just want to make my corner of the world better. I don't need to fix the whole world, and I don't know how to fix the whole world.
Yeah.
I am not gonna be the solution to climate change. I'm never gonna be the solution to anti-war work. Like I'm just not. I'm not smart enough. I'm not knowledgeable enough. I'm not intuitive enough to solve these huge big world problems.
I personally just don't want to.
I mean, I'd love to solve them, but I know that I am not even close to being smart enough to figure out how to solve climate change.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, but I can take the problems of my part of the world, whether that's New Haven, that's Connecticut, that's my house, like whatever. I can take the problems that are in and around me and try to make the world better in and around me. And that's how I operate. I had a friend ask me, like, Patrick, how do you cope with like all the stress of the world? Like, I don't understand why you don't get more stressed out by like everything that's going wrong and blah, blah, blah. And this was like kind of a height of COVID moment, where it was like, like one bad news after another and over and over and over. It's just constant, right? And I just said, like, honestly, I read it, I acknowledge it exists, I make myself aware of it, but then I don't let it like stop me from where I am right now. I can't solve 250,000 people being dead from COVID. I can't. There's nothing I can do to solve that other than to wear a mask when I walk out of the house and not do stupid crap, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's all I can contribute to that conversation. But can I contribute to protecting high school students in Connecticut who want to play sports and who happen to be trans, and that politicians want to take that right away from them? Yes, I can do something about that. I can talk to legislature about why I feel that's the wrong thing to do. Or I can talk to people about, try to change hearts and minds through authentic conversations with the community. Like, those are the things I can do. That's a problem, a real world problem that I can help to come up to a solution with. And so that's just how I live. I live in this, and I try to live in the moment. I try not to obsess. I mean, I'm a planner and I obsess a lot about the future, but I'm also not. I also am very much in this moment, because if I sit here and worry about like, oh, what is the world going to be like in 6 months? Like, I can't do anything now. I can't.
You truly are an old soul, aren't you?
I am. I'm an old man. And you should hear me complain to my boyfriend when like my neighbor has music playing at 9 p.m. I'm like such an old man. Yeah. But no, I'm an old soul. I'm a very, very old soul.
When's your birthday?
When's my birthday? In March. I'm an Aries.
Okay. I'm just curious. So how is New Haven doing? Not just in terms of pride and not just in terms of COVID or whatever. How's New Haven doing?
I think we're in an interesting place. I think we're at an interesting crossroads. I think now now sucks to be alive, but also it's super awesome to be alive right now, because we're seeing a lot. We're seeing the crossroads of, maybe something actually might change with racial justice in this country. Like, we're seeing, real conversation happening in ways that it's not happened since probably the 50s. Around racial justice and women's liberties and queer communities, and the whole conversation is happening around the social revolution. It's like I imagine what it would have been like to be an activist in like the 60s, or an activist
no, you know why?
Why?
Our lives back then were so much less violent. It really was. We had we might have gotten away with smoking cigarettes in the bathroom in high school, but smoking weed, bringing weapons, no, never even occurred to us. Never even occurred to us, until the latter part of my high school years. Then and only then did weed become a
thing.
And it was nice weed. It wasn't this that's where people get nasty.
Good weed.
They get nasty. We were mellow,
That's hilarious.
and
hence the flower people and all peace. And
yeah, that was me. That was me. We had that kind of an existence. We had something. Yeah, I remember, Roseanne Barr has gotten to be such an idiot, but I remember one thing she said on her show once is, there was a war on. It was fun. We loved it.
That's hilarious.
And that's really the way it was. We were pretty. We were in love with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then the most traumatic thing to my life, to be honest with you, was in 1970, the Kent State Massacre with the United Guard, the National Guard, rather. It was abhorrent to me that anyone, police violence, if it was there, It sure didn't touch us. But that was just, I think it's what changed the history of my life was students getting murdered on a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
No. Mm-mm, no. So our time was much less violent then than it is now. New Haven to me is a wonderful, wonderful city. I love New Haven,
Same.
but I wish it could be what it was. I wish it could be um, quieter. I wish there could be less noise. I wish there could be less violence. I wish there could be more accountability, and I mean personal accountability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got a kid living across the hall with his mom at 27 who doesn't have a job. He's just sitting around.
Mm.
So, you know, what does he do? Well, he smokes weed. You know, he's a pain in the neck. He's out panhandling. You know, it's like you're 27. You know, so there are a lot of things about New Haven that I wish it was.
Mm.
You know, and that disappoints me because I dearly love New Haven. You know,
I love New Haven. I guess I moved here when the noise was already happening, so it's ingrained in my experience.
I haven't lived here all that long, but there's still, you know, New Haven has had a theater nostalgia for me. And when the theater was big and like the Schubert was all these shows of, you know, big deal. I mean, I read a biography of Mae West, and in it she talks about appearing at the Schubert, for God's sakes, you know.
Well, that's Elaine Stritch. She in her one woman show, what was that called? Oh gosh, Elaine Stritch something. But she had a whole segment where she talked about doing I don't remember what show at the Schubert, but she still lived in New York and taking the train back and forth every day. And she tells this whole story about it. It was actually quite fascinating.
Yeah. So you must be starving if you just got home from work.
I'm fine. I gotta wait for. Sorry, I'm getting messages. I'm just waiting. I gotta wait for my boyfriend to get home anyway.
So who is the boyfriend?
His name is Kyle.
Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been together for how long?
So we been together just over 6 months.
Oh.
So he is my quarantine relationship. I knew Kyle before like the whole COVID thing happened. I probably known him 2 years, maybe a little longer. And I met him doing charity work actually. During early COVID, I don't even know if we were shut down yet. Well, no, we probably were because I think it was after my birthday. I commented on something he posted on Facebook, and that turned into a conversation on Messenger, which turned into our first date, which turned into 6 months.
Wonderful. You know, when you're talking about going with your instinct and your guts, that's been something in my life in a kind of a different way, but same thing is that whenever things in my life go along easily, they're meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm hit with roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, it's like, Dawn, you better back up off that.
Yeah, it's a sign something's wrong.
Yeah. So when are you, you know, you don't have a crystal ball or anything, but how is your community, you and the drag community and so on and so forth, how are you performing, and how are you with shows or any sort of, you know?
It's hard. It's hard. You know, and now we're getting the second wave or fifth wave, depending on who you ask.
Alex got a notice last week. She's been out of work for 2 weeks because somebody at her work, she's an art teacher at a private school, and somebody at the job
tested positive. Somebody tested positive.
They sure did. So it got shut down for 2 weeks, and then she just got the notice that because of this, you know,
uptick
wave here, she's going to be out till the end of the month. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's with the new rules that the governor just put out, like I had finally started to have shows again and they all got canceled. Like and it's hard, it's one of the things. I mean, I spent 5 years building a brand. I spent 5 years building up shows. I had shows that I one of my shows I'd been running for over 3 years. And this idea of rebuilding all of that is exhausting. it's
Mm-hmm.
it's just exhausting to think about rebuilding all that.
Mm-hmm.
um and also trying to build a virtual empire is exhausting to think about. And it doesn't help that I'm working 10 times harder during COVID than I ever was. and,
I think it's so much more effort.
and let me tell you, running a nonprofit during COVID is like being the most exhausted person on the planet every day.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would never try to compare myself to like someone who is like a doctor right now, because that's probably even worse. But running a nonprofit right now it's like I'm at a level 10 stress all day, every day. And the idea of like coming home and trying to creatively create a drag look or an outfit or a mix or any, like all of that is just, it's like exhausting to think about even tackling,
I
let
can
alone doing. And so when I have done drag during COVID, it's been very few and far between. It Every time I do it, I feel like I'm doing it worse. And I've also like gotten fat during COVID, so like half my drag won't fit properly, and I don't know. It's like drag is super overwhelming right now. It's I don't think I'm at a place where I'm like, I never want to do it again, but I'm at a place where I'm like, I don't know how to do this right now. And it's, I have 2 times I'm putting on drag between now and the end of the fiscal, like the end of the calendar year.
hmm
And I'm gonna do some hard thinking about what 2021 looks like. I mean, drag was also a major second part of my income. And
Sure. Yeah.
I can't claim that as unemployment. I mean, I probably could, but then I probably owe $1 million in taxes. But
Yeah.
like I've lost essentially my entire second income for 2020. And you know, it wasn't a small amount of money. Let's just put it that way. I pay taxes every year because Kiki makes enough money that I have to pay taxes. And so losing all that income is also really hard.
Mhm.
And the reality is like my life budget and what I have calculated that I can pay in rent and everything else is based on these two incomes coming in. And so it's definitely been a very complicated 9 months or however long it's been. It feels like
Well,
it's been
does
100
Kyle
years.
live with you now?
He does not live with me officially. He is here a lot.
Oh, I was just when you were talking about income and whatnot, I was just
Yeah, he's here a lot. He's not like, he does not officially in any shape or way live here.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Although that might change at some point in the near future.
Do me a favor,
Yeah,
okay? You want to answer a question for me?
sure.
Who's your hero? And it has to be
Ooh.
someone of some notoriety. It can't be like, Aunt Gertrude
Hmm.
or something like that.
Hmm. Gosh, I have no idea. That's a good question. Um, who's my hero? That's a good question. I don't know if I have a hero per se. I have I have people I look to, and I have people I've looked to in a lot of different ways. Like there's like heroes that I have that are incredible local people that I look at and I'd be like, oh, I really wish I could be like them and do like them. And there's a lot of those kinds of people in my life.
Well, name
That
one.
Say that again.
Name one.
Um, Someone like Juan Carlos Soto, who I have the privilege of working with every day. Someone like Kamora Harrington from Hartford, who runs Kamora's Cultural Corner. Someone like Ala Achumer, who's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter New Haven. Um, these are, almost any trans person in my life are heroes to me because God damn, I
That's
wish
some
I could.
guts, man. You got
I
guts.
wish
That's
I had.
major guts.
I wish I had the wherewithal and the knowledge of myself to live as authentically as a trans person does. I
Holy
like,
shit.
man, I wish I had half of the, you know, I'm going to use the word confidence. It's not the right word, but
It's
to be
major
myself.
guts.
Yeah, I mean,
Holy
it's.
shit.
I mean, I don't know. It's like I mean, there's so many people I look to as heroes in that sense. But when I think of like maybe someone might know, um, it's hard. It's hard because I'm, it's one of these things. I've never been obsessed with people. I've never been like, I always joke that I like animals more than I like people.
Mhm.
Um, I've never been someone that's been like really obsessed with any single person, more so concepts or things that they might do. There's of course, people like a Sylvia Rivera or a Marsha P. Johnson or and Baynard Rustin, or these incredible people from queer history. I have a lot of admiration for.
Mhm.
I don't know if I would heroize any of them, and I think
Okay,
this
then
goes.
do,
Yeah,
do do this for me.
yeah,
A conversation. This now. Did you listen to the videos of with Gary Winfield and Chris?
I have not
It's
done that
okay.
yet.
You don't have because in some ways it's good because then you won't have been prepared for this question.
Oh,
If
okay, here we
you
go.
could,
Okay. Hard news
you
question.
wouldn't have cheated. So if you could have a conversation with anybody living or dead, who would it be? And it has to be someone of some notoriety.
Ooh.
One conversation, one person.
Hmm.
I love how people get so stumped with this.
It's well, because it's so hard because there's so many things that go through your mind. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, like someone like a Greta Thunberg, like that'd be super fascinating to have a conversation with her.
Ooh,
Greta Thunberg, she's the young activist from the Scandinavias who's like taking on climate change at like 15.
Jesus
Um,
Christ. Patrick, you thinking?
but then it's like it'd be super fascinating. Like I think it'd be super fascinating to sit down with the Pope and understand like why is religion so important to your life. Like that. I think that would be a super fascinating conversation.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
I think it'd be massively fascinating to sit down and talk to like Alan Turing or someone from history who
Oh,
was directly
wow.
tied to World War II. I think like there's so many people that go through my mind. I'm a little overwhelmed.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but I think, you know what? I think I'm going to settle. This is so hard. Um, I think it would be really cool to sit down with somebody who is super intersectional. So I'm thinking someone like Baynard Rustin. Um, this is so hard. It's so hard. Like, or like a Harvey Milk would be super fascinating,
Ooh, yeah,
or
right?
or a Jose Saria. I don't know if you know who that is, but so he was the first queer person in U.S. history to run openly for political office. He did it actually before Harvey Milk. He didn't win, which is why he's not always as known. But he was I believe, immigrant.
Mhm.
He might have been U.S. born, but of Mexican heritage, or Latinx heritage, but I believe Mexican, if I remember correctly. He was a drag queen opera singer.
Oh, too
Like
cool.
he founded the International Court System, which now has like 90 chapters all over the world.
Can
Of
you do me a favor and send me just a
yeah,
link
yeah.
or the name or whatever?
Yeah, and it'd be fascinating to sit down with someone like Jose, or as people call Mama Jose, because she was brilliant and forward thinking, but also very traditional and backwards thinking at the same time. Like, she did not get trans, like, even though she founded this incredible system that played with gender and like used drag to raise millions and millions of dollars for charity. She didn't get trans. She didn't understand. And so like talking to someone like that has this like almost conflicting views with me would be fascinating.
Well, you know what? I don't really understand homosexuality. I don't really get lesbians. I don't really get any of it. But you know what? That's not my job.
Right.
It's not my job to get you.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Like, because like something that
my
that
job
Mama
is
was,
to just you be in my world and I'll be in yours. And that's
right.
You know what I mean?
Like,
I don't give a shit. Really,
Mama Jose, from my understanding, I never met her. She died, I want to say 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And she did not like bearded drag. If you were in drag, you should not
I don't
have
care
a beard.
for it either. I can understand that.
I have done bearded drag many times.
No.
I did it when I was Empress, and I'm sure she would have rolled in her grave knowing that I was doing that. And
Well, the Waterloo thing that I watched too.
Yeah.
You were there with the other queen with a beard.
Yeah, that sounds like me. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, it'd be fascinating to sit down with someone like that has partially the same views as me, but also very different views. But right. I think I'm going to settle with Baynard Reston. I think his intersectionality would be fascinating to, and just like, I don't know, he did so many things in his life and his life was cut so short. It'd be fascinating to know. And it'd be also fascinating, like, if we could have that conversation, like, in 2020, so that I could be like, well, what do you think has happened of the world since over the last 40 years?
Wouldn't that be cool, eh? Wow.
Right? To have the conversation, like, again, to have the conversation about social justice reform that's happening right now, compared to what was happening when he was doing that kind of work, like, fascinating.
Right. So, my darling.
Yes.
I appreciate you doing this with me so much.
Thank you for having me and letting me ramble and nonsense for an hour.
Don't be silly. You are just as wonderful and as entertaining as when I first laid eyes on you, and I just adore you. Thank you.
I adore you too.
So have a lovely evening. Thank you again.
Thank you.
This will air tomorrow, probably around noontime.
Fabulous. I look forward to listening to my ramblings back.
And I'll send you the link, and we'll share it everywhere, and life will be good.
Awesome.
I love you, darling. Have a wonderful day tomorrow.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.